with glass. The canal wasn't as deep as Orsola thought. When she fell in, the water's coldness jolted her, and she flailed about, sinking until her foot touched the muddy bottom. At that moment, what had seemed so deep and powerful suddenly lost its mystery. She heard her mother cry out, but her brother Marco was laughing as Orsola came up, spluttering, the water only to her shoulders. "You pushed me!" she cried. "Cretino!" "Orsola, basta!" Laura Rosso scolded. "People are listening." They were. Muranese residents were standing in the doorways of the glass workshops that lined the fondamenta, laughing at the Rosso girl in the canal. "I didn't push you," Marco retorted. "You're so clumsy. You went and fell in, Bauca. What a stupid sister I have." Orsola and her mother and brothers had been returning from a visit to her aunt and grandmother on the other side of the island. Her nonna was poorly and insisted on seeing them, convinced she was dying, though she was well enough to get up and hand Orsola a little sack of pine nuts she had recently bought at the market, because she didn't want them to go to waste if she did die. Zia Giovanna rolled her eyes at the thought, but Orsola carefully took the sack from her grandmother and promised to give it to Maddalena, their servant. The Rossos had been walking back beside the Rio dei Vetri, the canal of the glassmakers, which cut through the part of Murano where many of the glass workshops were located, when Marco bumped her hard and she went reeling into the water. She did have the presence of mind to throw the sack of nuts behind her as she fell. That was what the family pointed out whenever they later retold the story, that young Orsola had had the sense not to waste precious pine nuts. Giacomo, always the kinder brother, and never as interesting as a result, picked his way down nearby steps covered in algae. Kneeling in the muck, he reached over and pulled Orsola up the slimy stairs. She fell onto the fondamenta, gasping and spitting out water, then lay there for a moment, mortified. Only drunkards fell into canals, or people out at night who had lost their bearings in the dark. Laura Rosso helped her daughter to her feet and began to dry her with her shawl. "Cold you are and dirty," she muttered. Glancing around to check that people had lost interest, she nodded at a door close by. "You should go into the Barovias and warm up by their furnace." "She can't do that," Giacomo interjected. "They'll never let her in." "They won't let a girl catch her death, even a rival's daughter." Laura glanced through the door's iron filigree window, her face a set of calculations, then pulled it open and beckoned to her daughter. "Quiet now. Keep your eyes open and report back what you see." Orsola hesitated, but her mother was not someone you argued with. And she was cold and wet, and the nearby furnace was tempting. She could hear its muffled roar. She scuttled in, her mother pulling the door to and shutting her off from her family. Looking back through the small window, she noted Marco's smirk, Giacomo's worried face, Laura's shooing gesture. Orsola headed down a passage that opened out into a yard, empty of people, but cluttered with crates and barrows, full of broken glass and stacked wood and long glass canes in many colours leaning against the wall. The ground glittered with fragments of glass, like multicoloured frost. There seemed to be little order to the yard. Surrounding it were small buildings, a storeroom for more glass and the ash and sand and lime to make it, a room with its door ajar, where she observed shelves stacked with plates and bowls and platters, vases lined up of different shapes and sizes and colours, rows and rows of glasses, chandeliers like octopuses tangled together, all waiting to be packed and eventually shipped to Amsterdam or Lisbon or London or Hamburg or